What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Jenks Island podcast, the only NFL podcast where your takes from a washed-up Division III quarterback and his friends. It is officially NFL Week 1. We've gone all off-season. We're making content all off-season just to build up to this moment. And it's officially Week 1, and we're here to make our picks for the season. We're going to be making our picks as well as giving a hot take every single week and then a parlay at the end of the episode as well. Each one of us have created a 4-leg parlay for you guys out there to either tail or say in the comments down below that they're absolute trash. So let us know down below what you guys think. Quick interruption here from the episode for a fun announcement. We're going to be doing another pick'em group for the upcoming 2025 season. And just like last year, we'll be giving away an NFL jersey of choice to whoever wins at the end of the year. Our only restriction for winning that jersey is that you subscribe to the channel. So make sure to click the link right here down below to join that group and hit subscribe, and you'll be eligible to win a jersey of your choice. We look forward to competing with you guys week in, week out. Let's get back to the episode. All right, we got the Eagles taking on the Cowboys in Philadelphia, guys. This one, it's a big game, but with the Micah Parsons trade, it became a much smaller game. Ty, start us off. Who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's pretty easy, right? Like, it's going to be the Eagles. We kind of talked about this a little bit beforehand. Like, I was thinking, like, would it be a hot take that the Eagles score 50 points? And Sterb pretty quickly was like, no. And I was like, exactly. Like, right. Like, this is the Cowboys without Micah Parsons is a shell of a defense. And Philly's coming off a Super Bowl, right? Like, they're going to be hot. I don't think they're really going to have a hangover because they didn't lose many guys. I think this is going to be a blowout. So,
Sterb, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much to add here. I'd be surprised if this game was within 2 touchdowns. I mean, like, their left tackle, Dallas's left tackle, Tyler Guyton is coming back from an injury. You got Diggs coming back from an injury in the secondary as well. That defense is completely depleted and was like a bottom 3 unit without Micah last year. And now you get rid of Micah. Like, this is just going to be an absolute beatdown. I don't see any way where I'm probably picking this by like 20 points if I had to guess.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, I think everyone's kind of doubting the Cowboys. I feel bad for the Cowboys fans out there. They had a glimmer of like hope going towards the season, and then the whole Micah trade happened, and it's just all gone. You're basically the Bengals as the NFC. Now you're going to be praying for a blowout every single week where you somehow eke out a victory. But I'm definitely going to have to go the Eagles here as well. And let me add real quick, this season, Sterb, Ty, and I are competing individually outside of the pick'em group that we've set up. We're going to be each choosing up to 2 locks every week, which is worth 3 points. And then if we get within those wrong, or they're worth 2 points. And if they're wrong, I believe it's -2, I said. And then for the underdogs, we're going to be doing 1 underdog each week that we choose. We can choose more underdogs, but only 1 counts towards our scoring. And that'll gain you 2 points as well. And you only lose 1 point for that. So do you guys want to use a lock on this game, since this one we're predicting way higher, like the Eagles over the Cowboys?
Yeah, I'm going to use a lock on this game.
All right, so Sturbs, one of his locks is locked in on this one. Ty, what do you think?
No, I felt like this was too easy of a lock. I'm going to save it for 2 other ones that I think are a little bit more interesting.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll save mine too. I got a couple other games coming up. Next,
wow.
We got this. Next, we're moving on to Sao Paulo, Brazil, for the Chiefs taking on the Chargers. Chargers get a home game taken away, obviously, but they're still the home team technically in this one. Sterb, start us off. Who do you got in this one?
I think it's going to be KC. I think it's going to be probably by a field goal or so. The last time we saw a Brazil game, it was a little sloppy. The field wasn't in great condition, but honestly, if this is different, I honestly feel like it's still probably going to be a pretty sloppy game. You got 2 teams that are like a little questionable on offense. You lose Rashawn Slater, you replace a left tackle, and you got Josh Simmons coming in. I feel like this might be like more of a defensive battle than kind of people are hyping it up to be. Obviously, you have 2 stellar quarterbacks, but I'm kind of expecting this to be like a 24-21 sort of game, and the Chiefs just kind of eke it out.
Ty, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, the talk of the whole offseason, right, has been, are the Broncos and are the Chargers going to be able to overtake Kansas City? And Kansas City, they lost Rashee Rice for the first couple of weeks of the season. We saw kind of how that affected their receiving core last year when he went down, right? Xavier Worthy wasn't able to step up to the bill. They do get Hollywood Brown for the start. And then they lose Justin Reed on the defensive side, which I think is a lot bigger loss than, a lot of us have kind of been talking about the whole offseason. He was a leader on that defense. He'd been there for a really, really long time. And outside of him, right, that secondary is really young. Obviously McDuffie's there, but the corners are young, the safeties, on the back end. Not a big fan of it. This is actually my upset pick of the week. I like the Chargers a lot here. I think they added a lot of the pieces that were a big question mark for them in the, coming into the season, right? It was receiver. It was a lot of the weapons, right? They add Najee, they add Hampton. They go out, bring Keenan Allen back. He's got a great connection with Justin Herbert, Trey Harris, right? Like they really revamped that offense from what was just Lad McConkey last year, pretty much, and sprinkles of the running game into a well, balanced team that, Justin Herbert's got a lot around him, right? Obviously, they lost Slater, but they still have Joe Alt. They still have really good weapons, and that defense, I think, is. I know Sterb kind of talked about this being a defensive battle. The two keys to this game, right, I think are going to be the Chargers defense. Can they force a turnover on Mahomes? I think they can. I think they're a better defense than the Chiefs will be. And then the run game. And I just trust the Los Angeles Chargers run game a hell of a lot more than I do the Chiefs because just the way that we saw them finish the season last year. So upset of the week, I have the Chargers defeating the defending Super Bowl losers, I guess you would call them, right? They went to the Super Bowl last year. I don't think that, they're going to come into the season. I think they'll come in hungry, but I don't think it'll show on the field. I think, they have a lot to prove.
I'm upset. You stole my thunder. I was going to have a whole mic drop moment picking the Chargers underdog pick of the week over the Chiefs because you guys know I've been kind of down on the Chiefs this whole off season. But yeah, no, I completely agree on all fronts here. I don't really want to add too much because you guys really did hit it on the nail. I'm going to go the Chargers in this one over the Chiefs. I think Rashee Rice is going to be a bigger hit than people expect. I think the Chargers are full force going into week one. Moving on to the Buccaneers taking on the Foul Clowns in Atlanta. I'm going to go with the Buccaneers here beating the Foul Clowns. I think the Buccaneers, right, when you look at their team as a whole, I think their roster is better on paper. And I think Michael Penix still needs a little bit of time, right? He's obviously had some good games to end the season last year, but they were against weaker defenses. The Buccaneers have a solid defense in the league. And I think that the Buccaneers are going to be giving Michael Penix a little bit of fits. It might be a little bit of a closer game week one, rivalry game tends to be closer, but I think the Buccaneers eke it out. I think they have more firepower on offense. I really like Emeka Egbuka going into this game. I know Sterb and I are really high on him going into this throughout this whole draft process in the offseason, and then going to an offense with Baker Mayfield obviously opens up a lot more for him. So I think Emeka Egbuka is going to have a good game. Bucky Irving is going to have a good game. I think the Buccaneers pretty easily handle the Foul Clowns in this one. Ty, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, one of the big matchups that we got to look at, right, is with Caleb McGarry out, the addition of Hassan Reddick for the Buccaneers. I know he didn't have a great, season last year, but he's still a quality pass rusher. And going against a backup offensive tackle with McGarry, I think, with a young quarterback, that could pose a real problem for the Falcons, right? Like they have a lot of question marks, young defensive, weapons that they added. They got the Penix who, looked decent last year and he got better week by week, but how is he going to, now this is his job, right? How is he perform with a full offseason under him? I just think the Buccaneers, a more veteran-led team with some of the young additions that they made in the offseason are just more ready to win right away and have success early in the season, kind of like they did last year. They had a lot of success to start the season last year. So I think they get it rolling here and defeat the Falcons.
Yeah, Sterb, anything to add?
Yeah, we've seen with these kind of like NFC battles last year, and especially like the past couple years as well, that like it's kind of just like an offensive showdown, and it's kind of like kind of which way the ball bounces of who's going to end up with the win here. I think the Falcons actually beat the Bucs both times last year, and I just think this team is like a little healthier. Like I think Tristan Wirfs is going to be like a bigger miss than most people are projecting, and I'm going to go my upset of the week here, and I'm going to go the Falcons over the Bucs.
Interesting. I don't mind it. I like it, but I hate it at the same time with the Foul Clowns. But I do like using the underdog pick of the week early in the slate. Moving on to the Bengals, Browns. Sterb, who do you got in this one?
I have the Bengals here, and they kind of have to do this. Like I know in the first 2 weeks of the season, they've been like really, really bad in the past seasons. The Browns historically have given them like a bit of trouble in like the past decade, even though the Browns are a significantly worse franchise in terms of winning. Well, sort of, but anyways, yeah, it's really like a measure of how well this Cincinnati O line can hold up. If they can hold up enough to get like T Higgins and Jamar Chase downfield, I really don't think the Cleveland Browns stand a chance. And then on offense, like I know the Cincinnati Bengals, like the big like selling point with Al Golden is that like he's going to connect with the younger players. I don't know how much I really buy into that in terms of like turning a defense around. Like I think the defense is going to be probably bottom 5, maybe bottom 3 again. And but this Browns offense maybe bottom 5, bottom 3 as well. So I think just the Bengals offense is going to overpower them here.
Joe Flacco is going to be slinging that thing around. Don't you forget about Jerry Jeudy either. No, I'm kidding.
1,000-yard receiver.
It's very possible that they finish bottom 5, but Jerry Jeudy will have 1,000 yards. It's a sure bet. Like I'm not. It's sure. It's a sure thing. It's free money, honestly, for all the bettors out there. But anyways, Ty, do you have anything to add to the Bengals Browns choice?
Yeah, I think it's similar to the last game, right? It's just more of a veteran-led team versus a young team. The Browns obviously made a lot of additions in the offseason, just specifically in the draft with trading back with Travis Hunter and gaining a lot of guys, but no Judkins. I like Sampson. All talks of Mason Graham this offseason were that he was kind of struggling. So, there's just not that much hope on the Brown side. And I think the Bengals, where they were to start the season last year and where they ended, I think they were a much better football season, ending the season and coming into this season, right? They kind of figured out the run game with Chase Brown there. I like the addition of Shamar Stewart. All talks of him this offseason when he was actually at camp was that he was kind of wrecking things. You hope that he can, at least close on some of these sacks, and if not, force them back into Trey Hendrickson, and maybe he gets 25 sacks. But and I was huge on the addition of Demetrius Knight too. I loved him coming to the pre-draft process. So, as bad as this defense is, they still have some, upside there, especially with those two young guys. So I like the Bengals here. I don't think the Browns stand a chance. Flacco might make it interesting for a little bit, but the Bengals beat him both times last year too. So,
yeah, Demetrius Knight, I mean, we were talking about him during the draft process, basically like a heat-seeking missile. So he's going to be a really good addition. I think the Bengals do pull this one out. It could be closer, like Sterb said. It could be closer than people expect due to it being in division and the Browns always being a frisky team with going against the Bengals. So I'm going to go the Bengals, but it could be closer than people expect. Moving on. Sorry.
I don't know if it's going to be close. I either think the Browns like eke it out by like a point or something, or the Bengals just blow them out.
That's possible. I'm telling you, that defense, man, I think Joe Flacco comes out slinging it against this defense. He does it like you'll see Joe Flacco just come out. He's terrible, right? We watch him. He played with the Colts last season, right? We watch him go out there. He has games where you're like, Joe Flacco, hold up. And then like another week, he'll be absolutely terrible. So we'll see what side of the coin Joe Flacco appears on this week. Moving on to the Dolphins versus the Colts in Indianapolis. Ty, what are going to be your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a great game, obviously. We've been talking about the Dolphins all offseason as possibly being a bottom 5 team, simply because of the offensive struggles they've had in the past couple of years, right? They haven't been able to regain that glory they had there in that one season where Tyreek Hill was looking to break records and Tua was looking like one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. Since then, they've had the fall off on the offense. The defense is not great. Outside of Minkah Fitzpatrick, their second best player is probably Bradley Chubb. And, I'm not really that high on him. He's had some injury concerns. So, there's a lot of question marks across the board. And then you flip the coin, right? And you look at Indianapolis, and obviously they have a huge question mark at the quarterback position. I think they have a lot of talent around him, though. Daniel Jones, has had some success in his career, obviously made a playoff game with the New York Giants. I think this is a far better team than that New York Giants team he had, right? I like the receivers they have with Josh Downs, Pittman, the huge addition of Tyler Warren, and then obviously they have Jonathan Taylor, behind a really, really good offensive line. So he's set up for success, and the defense isn't too bad either. They added Travis Ward to shore up that secondary a little bit. So, I think at this point in the season, early on, it's without having seen anything on the field, you got to kind of look at the rosters, look at the paper, right? And I think the Indianapolis Colts just have the better roster than the Dolphins. And I got a hot take coming on later about this. So if you want me to drop it now, I'm happy to, but I can hold it for later.
Make them wait. Make the listeners or viewers out there.
There will be a hot
wait
take about this one, but I got the Colts over the Dolphins.
All right, I like it. Sterb, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to pick this game, but this is like you kind of have to pick it. Like this one is just whatever. But I think Miami, like early season, it's going to be the healthiest that you are. Mike McDaniel has a whole offseason to prepare for the Colts game, and I think he's just going to scheme up some stuff, and then Indianapolis is playing like maybe a little bit of catch up. So I kind of like Josh Downs here. I'm considering making him my fantasy player of the week. He's probably going to get a lot of targets with Daniel Jones throwing the ball short, then passing the ball, trying to catch up with Miami's offensive firepower a little bit. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to be enough, and I'm going to go with Miami here. And another thing that I heard on a podcast this morning is that the Colts haven't won a season opener since 2013, which is crazy. So they're due. However, I'm still picking against them.
They've been due since probably about 2020, and yet
exactly it hasn't worked.
This one's for Jim Irsay. All right, this one's for Jim Irsay.
This one. None of the previous. Yeah. Okay.
Rest in peace.
That is true. I forgot about that. There is some voodoo to that, right? We always see like the good stories that kind of come out of those sorts of situations. So that is a good shout out, Ty. I'm going to stick with
Jim Irsay.
No, I'm not. I'm sticking with Ty here. I'm taking the Colts over the Dolphins here. I think the injuries of the Dolphins already being a concern for this team kind of scares me. We've talked about this offense all off season of if this team stays healthy, obviously the offense can be a dominant force across the NFL like they have been in the past with Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane. But both of those guys are battling muscle injuries already, and that's not what you want to see. So I'm going to go with the Colts. Good. I'm going to go with the Colts here. It's not a game I want to pick, but I'm going to go with the Colts as well. None of you guys want to throw a lock or anything on this one? No locks.
No. Okay. Hot take coming soon.
Stay tuned for the hot take. Ty's got something brewing over there. Next, moving on to the battle of the big cats, we got the Panthers taking on the Jaguars in Jacksonville. This is kind of similar to that last game where I don't want to pick it because I think it could be a closer game than people expect. I'm going to go the Jaguars here. I think the Panthers, right? When we think about the Panthers, they're a young team. They had a lot of success, not success per se, but they had some hope brewing towards the end of last season with Bryce Young. Obviously, they bring in T-Mac and some other weapons and defensive pieces to the offense and defense. But Bryce Young still needs a little bit of time. Whereas the Jaguars, right? We see Liam Cohen come over. I think he is going to scheme up the offense so that Trevor Lawrence finally shines and is the quarterback that we all expected him to be coming out of college from Clemson, right? He was expected to be this number one player, a generational talent, all of those things. Came to NFL, showed a little bit of flashes here and there, but hasn't truly became that player. And I think this year is really his best shot. And this is a great game for him to start against the Panthers in a weaker secondary and defense. So I'm going to go the Jaguars here in this one. I think Brian Thomas Jr. has a good game. I'm really interested to see how they use Travis Hunter week one. If they use him in a certain way this week, are they going to continue that the next week, or if it's a changing basis every single week? So I'm excited to see that, but I think the Jaguars squeeze this one out over the Panthers. Sterb, anything to add to this one?
Yeah, I mean, for both of these defenses, you're getting key players back. You get Tyson Campbell back on the Jags, and then you get Derek Brown back for the Panthers. But I do think we are going to kind of see a Liam Cohen masterclass here. And the most talented unit by far in this matchup is the Jags offense. And I just think we're going to see that come to light. The Panthers defense was also really bad last year. Again, like I said, you get Derek Brown back, but I don't really think that secondary can hang with Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. And, this is kind of like a get right game for Trevor Lawrence, just kind of like get in the rhythm of the offense, hit some holes against a Carolina Panthers defense that has some holes in it, and just kind of let Liam Cohen ride and, get the victory here. So,
Ty, anything to add to that?
Yeah, slept on. This is a battle of former Buccaneers offensive coordinators, Dave Canales versus Liam
That's
Cohen.
true.
But yeah, I really think Liam Cohen's going to scheme up this Jaguars offense
Mhm.
to possibly be one of the better passing offenses in the NFL. You got Brian Thomas, who had a lot of success last year. You have Travis Hunter, who's coming in with a lot of hype. Very twitchy receiver. I like Brenton Strange a lot. He was one of my sleepers. ETN, maybe he can get him kind of rolling again as a, maybe mainly a receiving back, kind of like, what Bucky kind of emerged to last season. So I think they have a lot of really good weapons in that passing game. I'm really excited to see what, Trevor Lawrence can do under Liam Cohen. So I'm going to go with the Jaguars here as well. I think it could be a close game because I do like the Panthers, right? I think the
Yeah.
Panthers offense is young. They're emerging. I loved what I saw from Bryce Young at the end of last year. But like Sterb said, that defense is really bad. And Jacksonville has they have some studs on that defensive side of the ball. So I just think they're the better team at this point in time.
Yeah, shout out to T-Mac. I think he has a lot of possibilities
No
here to be
Jalen Coker, though. No Jalen Coker.
Yeah, no Jalen Coker.
Cokeheads.
the cokeheads. Shout out to the cokeheads out there. Anyways, moving on to the Raiders versus the Patriots. We got Sterb's love of his life, Drake May, taking on the Raiders. Sterb, who do you got in this one?
Drake May.
Drake May.
No, I
Drake
think
May
that
only.
this will be a fun one. This is the Loki Josh McDaniels Bowl, but I think this is going to be a pretty entertaining game. You get Ashton Genty on the other side, and then you got to kind of get some some questions all along the Raiders roster in terms of are they going to really be that talented? Like, are they really starting Dante Thornton and Darian Porter? Like, how's that going to look in terms of just two super high level athletes, just kind of thrusting them in there, round 3 and round 4 picks? Like, how are they going to look against this New England team who's renewed under Mike Vrabel? Another matchup to watch is just I guess I kind of already mentioned this, but the Raiders wide receivers versus, the New England secondary. New England secondary really isn't all it's hyped up to be. And then you got Christian Gonzalez coming back from missing a good amount of time. So this will be a fun one to watch, but I'm going with my guy, Drake May here.
Ty, anything to add?
Yeah, to Sterb's point there, right? Christian Gonzalez did not practice today, has not practiced thus far this week. So, that is a big question mark for this Patriots defense. However, they made a ton of additions on that front. Milton Williams, they brought in, Landry from the Titans, who's very familiar with Vrabel's system. I think both of these offenses are really good. They have a lot of potential to be some of the better offenses in the NFL, especially the Raiders. I think that, with Myers, with Genty, with Bowers, and bringing in Geno Smith under Pete Carroll, they could have a really successful offense. But at the end of the day, I think that this Mike Vrabel-led New England Patriots defense is going to be very, very tough. Even without Christian Gonzalez, right? I think they're going to dial it up on that front end. They're going to make life hell for Ashton Genty because this offensive line is really, really bad. And if you look at, kind of what this New England Patriots front is, it's a lot of run stoppers, Milton Williams, Christian Barmore. They're these bigger dudes that are going to be playing the run, stuffing it up for Genty. So I think it's going to be tough going for the Raiders. I think it could be a good game, but I'm going to go with the Patriots here too.
Yeah, you guys nailed it on the head again. I'm not going to add too much to this. The Patriots, in my eyes, I've been banging on their drum all off season long. I had them making the playoffs as my 7th seed in the AFC. And I think the Raiders do improve a lot, right? With Pete Carroll coming in, they've added to the offense with Geno Smith and other guys to the offense there. Ashton Genty, namely, is the biggest addition, right, going after the draft. So Ashton Genty brings them a lot of attention. They still have Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers. Now they added Amari Cooper, guys. They added Amari Cooper. This offense is now unstoppable. I'm kidding. But I think the Raiders did definitely improve. But I got to go with the Patriots. I've been banging on the drum all offseason long, so I got to stick with them here, and I'm taking the Patriots to beat the Raiders week 1. Moving on to the Cardinals, the Tweety Birds taking on my Saints. As you can see right here, the foam head coming out. The New Orleans Saints off season, right? We get Tyler Shuck. We got Spencer Rattler. They're duking it out day in, day out, preseason game, week in, week out. And in the end, Spencer Rattler, the rattlesnake, comes out blazing hot, ready to take down the Cardinals. I'm kidding. He's not blazing hot. but he is ready to take down the Cardinals. The offense with Kellen Moore is going to be, it's going to struggle if the quarterbacks aren't ready to perform. And that's something that's difficult. But I think they will try to run the ball more with Alvin Kamara. They're going to try to make that O-line a focal point of this offense. If they're healthy, they definitely can do that. They could be a top 10 O-line group in the league if healthy. Kelvin Banks being the big addition in the draft on the line. He was the highest graded pass blocker in the NFL in the preseason in his snaps. So I think Kelvin Banks could be a really good pickup. That could be a huge addition for the Saints in this game. The Cardinals on the other side of the ball, the defense, right? The Cardinals defense is going to be flying around the field every single play. They have them going into disguises until the snap on nearly every single play. That's going to be messing with Spencer Rattler, right? When we see Spencer Rattler, we think of a young guy who last season made a lot of mental mistakes in games, and that's what they're going to be trying to scheming him up to do this game as well. Offensively, the Cardinals, I think, are much better than the Saints, right? You have Trey McBride, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., you have James Conner, who's been a viable entity at the running back position for them every single season he's been there. And then you have Kyler Murray, who's been kind of all over the place, but I think you can expect him to have a solid game against this Saints defense. If anything, like on the ground, right? The Saints defense has struggled with Dennis Allen previously. So I want to see Staley come in and see if the Saints can slow down the Cardinals, and namely Kyler Murray on the ground. I'm going to pick my team, the Saints, to beat the Cardinals in this one. It's not my underdog pick of the week, but I got to go with my Saints. I think our defense will surprise some people. I think the D-line will have a good game in this one. I think Brian Bresee has at least one sack. Not a hot take, not anything, but I think Brian Bresee has a sack in this one. He looked really good in the preseason game that he played. And I think this defense at least slows down the Cardinals enough that the offense can score 1 or 2 touchdowns, and Blake Grupe will have 2 field goals. So this will be a close one, but I think the Saints eke it out at home. They do get the gold end zones a little bit dirty. Thank God. Hopefully that they're dirty at the end of the game. Hopefully they're not just still playing gold. But I do have the Saints winning this one in a close game. Ty, anything to add to this one?
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals are a little banged up, right? No Walter Nolan, no Sean Murphy Bunting. They're missing some of those key offseason additions they had, but they really kind of, when you look at the depth chart, kind of went in on, defensive additions. Josh Sweat, I think, is going to cause some havoc. He was obviously a key piece to that Eagles Super Bowl defense. I like the addition of Akeem Davis-Gaither on the inside too. So, they made a lot of additions. And Will Johnson, right? The Jenks, I know you love Will Johnson.
I do.
It looks like he had a little bit of a tough camp, but, he's obviously a very talented player. So, I think, like you said, the Cardinals defense is going to play pretty well. I just don't see, based on what we saw from Rattler last year, I don't see a way that he can kind of keep up with Kyler Murray, James Conner, and a Marvin Harrison Jr. that I imagine taking another step up, not to mention Trey McBride, who obviously had a fantastic season last year. So I like the Cardinals a lot. They were my sleeper team every week last year, but I don't think they're a sleeper this time. I think, this is a game that they should win, and I think that they will win because the Saints they're in a rebuild mode, right? They're probably going to be a bottom 3 team in the NFL. And the Cardinals, I think that they could compete for a wild card spot, right? I think it's going to be tough. They have an uphill battle in a tough division, and a tougher schedule. But, if Marvin Harrison turns out to be the player that we thought he was going to be last year, you never know. Because I think Kyler Murray, if you give him a big weapon like that, he could have a really good season himself. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals here.
Yeah, they're definitely being slept on playoff wise, but I think they're that middle of the pack, frisky kind of team, like you said. Sterb, anything to add?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to go against my Saints here, and I'm going to have to pick the Cardinals. Like Ty said, I don't really think we can keep up with their offensive punch. On defense, like really the two defenses kind of like throwing like amoeba looks and throwing a lot of weird stuff at the quarterback has been like Minnesota, and then this defense under Jonathan Gannon. And I think like, I really don't have a lot of faith in Rattler to handle all that. Just mentally, if he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. But I want to say, like, I think I looked this up earlier. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But he's like minus 200 or like minus 250 to throw a pick in this game. And that just kind of tells you everything that you need to know. So
it's more likely than not that he throws a pick.
Absolutely. Yeah. Unfortunate. If he doesn't throw a pick in this game, honestly, I feel like that's a very, very good sign. If he throws less than one pick and throws for like 150 or more yards, kind of a small W for the Saints, in my opinion.
Definitely.
But unfortunately, yeah, like week one, it's you just kind of got to bow down to the better team at this point. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals.
No, it's definitely fair. I'm only picking the Saints here because of the home field advantage, and I think the defense will surprise. I think the defense will surprise some people because of the safety additions with Justin Reed and Julian Blackmon, and then I think the D line definitely improved. But I think this is going to be a close game. I don't think anyone's really going to be watching this one except for the fans of these teams. It's not going to be a game that's going to be mainly focused on. But I think the Saints come out and pull a sleeper win.
I will say, Jenks was on the Saints last year early. He was on the Saints last year early with the two huge blowouts at the beginning of the season. So if anyone knows early season Saints,
I'm just saying. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. But yeah, no, I had the Saints moving up in the books last season, but we all saw what happened. Anyways, moving on to the Steelers versus the Jets in New Jersey. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, revenge game against the Jets here. Ty, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be – we were kind of talking about this before, right? I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I think the total, Sterb said, was at 38.5. I would probably hit that under. I think, this is probably more of a 20 to 17, 17 to 14 type of ball game. Two really good defenses, two really good defensive-minded coaches too, right? Mike Tomlin and obviously Aaron Glenn coming in here. I think Aaron Glenn is going to get this Jets defense back to performing like they should be, right? Because kind of after that Robert Saleh, situation when he got fired, Jets defense did take a little bit of a downturn towards the end of that season. I think both defenses play really well. I think it's just more about the offenses, right? I think Aaron Rodgers on the tail end of his career, not a lot of weapons there right now, right? Like they have like 3 tight ends that are all pretty good, but a receiver, it's just DK Metcalf. On the other side of the ball, right? For the other side of this game, the question is the Jets, right? What is Justin Fields? He struggled throughout the preseason. In one of the preseason games, he completed one of his 6 passes. I imagine that this Jets team is going to be more of a run the football, kind of a similar look to what the Lions were, right? Their offensive coordinator was the Lions tight end coach. I imagine that, Breece Hall, Braylon Allen will get a lot of run. Maybe we'll have a little bit of play action RPO mix in there for Justin Fields to kind of get his legs moving. But because of that, right, I think that because that will be the game plan, this will be a very low scoring game. I was tempted to take the Jets here because I do think that they can be dominant in running the football because I like their backs. But the Elijah Vera Tucker injury, I think, is going to be very key for them. He was one of their better offensive guards. You think about, the interior of the Steelers. That's the Cam Hayward area, right? Cam Hayward, he's lights out. He's a game wrecker. So I'm going to go with the Steelers here. I do think that the more veteran-led team, wins this game. Kind of how I've leaned on a lot of these games, right? It's the more experienced team will probably win the first game of the season, right? I think TJ Watt's obviously a game wrecker. So I'm going to go with the Steelers here, eking out a very, very close, low-scoring game against the Jets.
Sterb, anything to add?
Yeah, this is like a very tough one to analyze for me because, obviously, like both of the secondaries should be good, right? But then, like the offensive lines, you can kind of project some growth there, more so on the Jets side. I know that loss of Elijah Vera Tucker, which is probably going to be, a spoiler, the tiebreaker for me in this scenario. You have Fashanu and you have Membu, who are both coming back. In Membu's case, he's a rookie. So I think both of those guys should be really good in the run game. They should be able to just lean on their back trio and Justin Fields as well in the run game. But the problem is, if they get down, I don't think there's really any way for them to hit an explosive. They might get maybe one play of over 15 yards in this game. And that just, as you can't really win like that. And the Steelers just have a better avenue to explosives. They probably have a better avenue to turnovers with TJ Watt and then Cam Hayward stuffing up the run in the middle. So I think I'm going to go with the Steelers here. I did wrestle with taking the Jets. But kind of like Ty said, the more veteran team, I'm going to go with the Steelers.
Yeah, nothing to add. I think the Steelers are the better team on defense, at least at this point in time. They're older, they're veterans, and I think that they're going to get the job done on that side of the ball alone. I think they hold the Jets to less than 10 points. That's not my hot take of the week, but I do think they hold the Jets to less than 10 points or 10 points on the dot. So less than or even to 10. And I think the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers get the job done. He gets his revenge over the Jets in Jersey. Moving on to the Giants taking on the Commanders. Sterb, what are your thoughts on this game going to be?
I'm really just watching that Giants defense versus this Commanders offense. Like that O-line really needs to hold up. You have Laramie Tunzel, and then you have Josh Conerly stepping in. Josh Conerly against Abdul Carter did pretty well as a prospect when they were both in college. But you're dealing with Dexter Lawrence in the middle, and I don't really think this Commanders team is really going to be able to run that ball all that well. I know Ja'Cory Cross-Camara and whatnot.
Bill.
But, yeah,
I think
Jaden.
He is RB4.
Yeah, I don't really know how much I believe that. I think all four of them will get a decent amount of carries. But I think it's really on Jalen to pass the ball here. New York, they revamped their secondary, but still their strong suit is that D line. And then on the flip side of the ball, I'm looking at these wide receivers versus this Commanders secondary. You kind of need a big. You're asking a lot of Trey Amos. I love Mike Sanders still. I've talked about him before. And then you want to see kind of some return on investment on Marshawn Lattimore here. Obviously love him, but you weren't that happy with what you got out of him last year. So, yeah, I'm kind of watching this one. This will be definitely one that I have on, and one that I want to go back and watch this O-line versus D-line matchup that I talked about. But ultimately, I'm going to go with the Commanders here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Commanders here as well. I think the Giants do have I'm going to say top 5 defensive line group. They could end up being top 3 by the end of the year very easily. I think that the Giants, right, when you look at their offense, I'm not expecting very much for them. Obviously, they still have Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson. I think Theo Johnson could end up emerging as a solid tight end as well. But you have Russell Wilson currently. He's not going to give you a higher ceiling. And then I would say, I think Jaden Daniels does for the Commanders, obviously. And I think Russell Wilson he needs the defense to hold the opposing team to a reasonable score to get them a win. And I just don't see that happening in this one. I think the Commanders offense will have a solid game. Obviously, the defense could slow them down a little bit, but I think Jaden Daniels in that pass game for the Commanders is going to outdo Russell Wilson and the Giants pass game. So I'm going to go with the Commanders here in this one as well. Ty, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the one big key, right, is obviously the Giants have a really good defensive line, but if you look at the Commanders' offense and then who they added, right, their game is going to be a lot of the quick game, right, a lot of the screen game, right? That's a lot of what they did with Terry last year. That's a lot of what Debo has done really, really well, is that yards after the catch in the quick game. And quick game, that stymies a defensive line like this, right? You can't get any pressure when the quarterback's catch, rock, throw, and hitting a lot of these guys on the screens. And I just don't trust, the secondary of the Giants. I know they made some improvements to be able to tackle, a bigger back type of guy like Debo Samuel, right? Because he is that receiving, he's more of a running back type of build, right? That they played him a lot at running back in San Francisco. So, I think Terry McLaurin and Debo will probably have a lot of success in that quick game. Austin Eckler, also another guy who, as a receiving back in his career, has had a lot of success, and he's going to be that lead back for them most likely. Bill also, very lucid back. So I think that's going to be the huge part of this game is, how much does Cliff Kingsbury scheme up that quick game to get the ball out of Jaden Daniels' hands? And I think it's going to be a ton because he knows that the defensive line that he's playing against. And then on the flip side, right, like you said, Jenks, it's Russell Wilson. I don't think that this team has much hope for the future unless they start Jackson Dart. Even hope for this season unless they start Jackson Dart. I think Jackson Dart obviously looked really good in the preseason, and I hope Von Miller delivers some punishment to Russell Wilson for what he did to Von Miller's beloved Denver Broncos.
Yeah, Ty has firsthand experience with post Seahawks Russell Wilson, so he knows a thing or two. I'm going to make that a lock for me. I'm going to make the Commanders a lock for me, one of my 2. So that's my first lock of the week and of the season. So I'm excited to see the Commanders beat the shit out of the Giants. Moving on to Ty's beloved Broncos taking on the Titans in Denver. Ty, what are your thoughts for this one? What are your expectations against this Cam Ward-led offense?
Yeah, this is lock number 2 for me this week. I think, I
Damn.
like Cam Ward. I liked him coming out this week, but excuse me, coming out this season in the draft. But
Mhm.
I think he couldn't have drawn a tougher matchup. He gets the number 1 defense in the NFL from last
Yep.
season, a defense that added, some help. I think one concern for Denver is the Dre Greenlaw has not practiced so far this week. There was talks of a pitch count for him and Alex Singleton. The plus side for Denver, right, is that Justin Strnad got a lot of playing time last season with Singleton out. Obviously, we didn't have Dre Greenlaw, and Strnad played well. The defense was very, very good with no matter who we had at the inside linebacker position. But then you add Talanoa Hufanga, you had Jade Barron, right? This defense only got more dangerous. So I think going forward this season, the Titans offense could have some success, especially between Calvin Ridley and Cam Ward. But like I said, I think he just couldn't have drawn a tougher matchup. And then you look at the flip side, right? And I saw an interview today. Jeff Simmons, he was kind of talking about how Bo Nix, didn't take a lot of sacks because once he gets off his first read, he runs the football. He takes off and run. And I think Sean Payton talked about it a little bit, right? And he kind of touched on it in an interview today. But Sean Payton's going back in that locker room, and he's probably putting it. He's probably sending that text to Bo Nix. He's sending him that interview. He said, "Look what Jeff Simmons is saying about you." I think that's going to light a fire under Bo Nix's ass. I think Bo Nix might come out and throw 4 touchdowns, 300 plus yards against this defense, just simply because Jeff Simmons had the nerve to say that about Bo Nix. But this offense around Bo obviously got a lot better. You had Evan Ingram, the emergence of Pat Bryant and Troy Franklin in the preseason. You love him. RJ Harvey obviously looked very good, adding Dobbins. So, this team in all phases of the game got a lot better. And they're just playing a young team that, was not very good last season. So, lock of the week for me. But, with the Jeff Simmons thing coming out, I hope that we beat their ass.
Yeah, Sterb, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree. This was my second lock of the week.
Damn it.
Yeah, like this offense probably has like the clues.
Hang on, Jenks. What did you expect?
If you're saying damn it, then probably you should have
trying
locked
to have
as well.
unique locks here, and everyone's stealing the thunder. I'm going last, trying to give my co-hosts some nice attention, some time to give their analysis, and I'm just getting screwed over on the locks.
Yeah,
no, I know. I respect it. I respect it. Keep going, Sterb.
Yeah. Anyways, you got Calvin Ridley here. He's their clear wide receiver 1, and he just kind of gets fed to Pat Surtain in this game, and they really have no weapons outside of that. Besides, like maybe Chico Conquo shows you something nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know that Titans might score like 10 points this week. And on the flip side of the ball, like I think this is pretty much going to be a beat down. And then on the flip side of the ball, I'm just looking at like how the new offensive weapons are broken in. I'm looking at Evan Ingram, RJ Harvey, Pat Bryant, your boy, J.K. Dobbins. Like I'm looking at how like the roles play out. Marvin Mims, and see if he gets like an actual wide receiver 2 role, or if he's still using that more gadget way. So yeah, I'm looking to see like what Sean Payton kind of envisions for this offense in Bo Nix's year 2. So that's pretty much what I'm watching. There's not much to say on this one.
Yeah, the Broncos are my second lock as well. I think they're guaranteed. Like I Cam Ward going into his first game. I think this Titans offense will surprise some people. I think Alec Iamaner is going to surprise some people. We'll obviously have Calvin Ridley. Tony Pollard's still going to be a solid running back as well. But I think the Broncos defense is just going to be too good, too powerful for this team. So I think the Broncos win here as well. Moving on to the 49ers taking on the Seahawks in Seattle. This is going to be my underdog pick of the week. The Seahawks coming in to their home stadium, right? They're the underdogs at home week 1 against the 49ers, who last year obviously had a lot of injury problems, injury season from hell. Similar like the Saints, what they encountered, just everyone getting hurt, not ever what you want to see. But the 49ers, this offense, it doesn't frighten me. It shouldn't frighten this Seahawks defense either. Obviously, you have George Kittle, you have Brock Purdy, CMC. If he can stay healthy throughout this game, I think CMC will obviously have an impact. But I think the Seahawks, they have a well-rounded team. I think their offense is really going to surprise some people. I don't know why they're getting so slept on. They have Clint Kubiak, who last season, when the full Saints team was healthy, and to start the year, everyone thought that Clint Kubiak was going to be, a head coach, atop the head coach candidacy this offseason because of how dialed in that offense was when fully healthy. They went out, they scored 40 points against the Panthers, and they went out and they scored 40 points against the Cowboys. Both obviously didn't have great defenses, but the offense looked good. And I think this offense with the Seahawks will look good again. They obviously have JSN, Torrey Horton, Cooper Kupp. I think and the addition of Gray Zabel is huge as well, right? I think that goes slept on as well. Now they improved the O-line. Now Clint Kubiak's going to be able to run the ball a little bit more, and that's what he always wants to do. It's what he wanted to do with the Saints, right? Build the run game and then get to the pass game. And they have the pass weapons to do that, and they also have the running backs to do that as well. I think Kenneth Walker has a game. I think Zach Charbonnet is a great running back, a great RB2, and I think he has a good game as well. So this is my underdog pick of the week. I'm going to do the Seahawks over the 49ers. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's pretty crazy that in one of the toughest places to play in the NFL in a division rivalry game, that the Seahawks would be, the underdog here. I think another piece to add to all of this and everything that you said is, Clint Kubiak, right? What kind of scheme does he run, right? It's very similar to what Sam Darnold has run for the past 3 years, right? He's been on 3 different teams. He's been in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. Guess who his dad is? Mike Shanahan, who coached Gary Kubiak, who's Clint Kubiak's dad, right? Kevin O'Connell comes for the same system. He was coached under Mike Shanahan, right? So it's the same scheme that Darnold has, been able to be in the past 3 years, has been able to have some success in, right? When he stepped in for San Francisco, he looked pretty good in that backup role. Obviously had a ton of success last year with Minnesota, and now he's in Seattle. And I think, like you said, this offense, they're being slept on. They made some key additions. Cooper Kupp isn't the same, receiver that he once was, but I'm very, very high on JSN. I think if this running game can stay healthy, it can be very dangerous. That's another big key to that West Coast offense that, Mike Shanahan and Bill Walsh, before him kind of created is, you need a strong running game. And I think Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker will be a key piece of this offense. And then you think about Mike McDonald and his, acumen as a defensive coach. He's going to dial it out for Seattle. So, and San Fran, it's, they continue to deal with injuries. They continue to deal with, roster turnover. They lost 15 players this offseason, so now they're relying on a lot of young guys, especially on that defense. Breaking news, they just did give Jawan Jennings some more incentives on this deal. So, maybe he's not going to be as upset about everything, but, Jawan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall don't really move me on that offense. So,
Exactly.
I'm going to go with Seattle because I just think that they have positive momentum moving forward, and I think San Fran is regressing as a team still.
Yeah, Sterb, anything to add?
I will say I'm relatively higher on the Niners compared to you guys. I still do have Seattle in this game, but honestly, like when Shanahan has like a clean bill of health and he kind of gets to pick and choose his guys, it's going to be like a top 7 offense, and I just have a lot of faith in him. But like you guys said, like this Seattle offense, I feel like is getting a little slept on. Mostly the run game. I'm not like the biggest Sam Darnold believer, but I do believe like this O-line was like moving people in preseason. I know that it's preseason, but being a Saints fan, I know the effects of Clint Kubiak and what he can kind of do for your run game. And you bring in Gray Zabel, like Jake's mentioned. And also this defense over the second half of the year, they were right up there with Green Bay, Denver, Baltimore, and Philly. And they were 5th in EPA per play over the second half of last season. So, you give Mike McDonald a little more time and he's really going to dial up his defense. And honestly, I could see this defense being like a top 3 to 5 unit by the middle of the year. So, and probably on like a neutral field, maybe I might lean Niners, but it's enough of a tiebreaker just to go with the home team here. So I'm going with the Seahawks.
Yeah, no, I think the Seahawks are the right. But I'm just I'm shocked, honestly, that they're the underdog in this game odds wise. It just feels like they're the right pick here. And I think the 49ers are weak going into the start of the season. And I think a lot of people, like you said, Sturb, you're higher on them. I think Hammer is way higher on them than I am. I'm not expecting the biggest season from them, and I know some people are. So I'm surprised that the Seahawks are so overlooked in this one. So I'm glad we all 3 of us picked them. Moving on to the Lions taking on the Packers in Green Bay. Sturb, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm watching Micah. This is like the primetime game for me, and I'm also looking to see like how and if that Lions defense and offense have changed. With both of the coordinators being lost. So I just think that at this point, like Green Bay has just as much talent as the Lions at this point. I think that Micah Parsons really kind of puts that over the top. And, this team has been the youngest team in the NFL for like 3 years running. I just think they're going to put it all together this season. And, that the Lions O-line as well, like you lose, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on his name. Frank Ragnow.
You
lose him.
Retired, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he retired. I think that's, I think I talked about it last episode, but I think that's kind of getting slept on about how much the center does for that Lions O-line. And then I honestly think like, I was huge on both of these coordinators last year, like Ben Johnson, offensive genius. And then I wanted Aaron Glenn was like my number one target for the Saints to get, but we didn't end up getting him. So, I think these coordinators are going to be a little more lost than some people are realizing. And Green Bay, obvious arrow up this offseason. So I'm going with Green Bay here.
Yeah. Ty, anything to add?
Yeah, I'm not as I don't put as much weight on the coordinator loss for two reasons, right? I think, this team is very, very talented, obviously, but the second is, the coordinators that they're replacing with, right? Kelvin Shepherd has been with this team for quite some time. If you watch Hard Knocks, right, Kelvin Shepherd had a really big role in this defense as just a leader, and he, as a linebackers coach, right? That's the heart of the defense. So I really like him as kind of one of those up and coming guys. And then John Morton on the offensive side, right? Spent a little bit of time with Detroit 2 seasons ago, bounced over to Denver last year with Sean Payton. I think anytime that you can kind of, spend some time under Sean Payton, spend some time under, familiarity with the Detroit offense already, I think there will be continued continuity between these two. Maybe they won't be as creative as Ben Johnson was, right? But I think, get these guys some time to get their bearings underneath them, and they could be just as good of coordinators. Maybe not, becoming a head coach type of candidate, but I think they could have a lot of success with Detroit. I think the big question mark here is just the Micah Parsons thing, though. Like, does Micah play? Obviously, the back concerns have come up in the past week. I think he will end up suiting up. And that does, make this game a hell of a lot better. But I'm still going to eke out with Detroit here. I like Detroit's offense, obviously, a lot of continuity just in that terms there of talent-wise. They bring in Isaac Tesla. Obviously, losing Ragnow hurts, but Graham Glasnow has been kind of on and off with Detroit for years and years, was a guard for them, moving over to center. And I love Tate Ratledge, who they drafted as kind of the replacement guard there. Super duper high on him. And the defense, right? They just get healthy. And I think that's, they were the number one team in the NFC last year with a bunch of street guys playing on defense. So I'm going to go with Detroit here just because I think, they coming into this season have just continued, with a lot of their talent. And Green Bay, they have some question marks of like, who's going to be the wide receiver one? What's Matthew Golden's role? Like I said, will Parsons play? I think they'll be a good team. I think they'll be probably a top 3 team in the NFC, but it's I'm going to go with Detroit here.
Yeah, I was going to go to Detroit before the Parsons trade. I think, part of me still wants to pick the Lions here in this one, but I think the Packers at home, the momentum they have from the Parsons trade, I think the fans are going to be going crazy. I think that obviously carries a lot of weight. I said it earlier with the Saints home game pick. I think home field advantage is a real thing, especially when it's this early in the season. The fans have all this hope from this sort of trade. The offense is going to be even better, obviously, with Matthew Golden, Jordan Love, and him already have this great connection, as we've seen throughout the preseason. The Lions on the other side, I think their offense is going to be still fine, even though Frank Ragnow did leave. He was only 29 and he retired, which was a little bit of a surprising loss for them, obviously. But him, David Montgomery, and Jahmyr Gibbs are going to have the same rushing connection they did last year. I think there's still going to be a dominant rushing duo. I think Jamison Williams does take a step up again this year. And I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be the same receiver he's always been. And mentioning the loss of the coordinators, I do think that is a big loss, right? Obviously, anytime you lose coordinators of that level and that pedigree, that's a tough thing to replace. But like you said, Ty, they replace them with the guys that they're confident in, and I think they'll get the jobs done. Dan Campbell, what he's done has gone overlooked, right? I think Dan Campbell took this team to this spot, and it's not just because of the coordinators, because he is a great leader of men. I think he's going to have them hyped up, ready to go into this season, and he's going to have them really well coached. And I think that's getting overlooked this year. I don't know why Dan Campbell is becoming overlooked all of a sudden, but if they go out and do the same thing they did last year, he's going to win Coach of the Year 100%. I think that's a lock if he goes out and wins 15 games again after losing both coordinators. So I think the Lions in this one, they do lose the Packers. I'm going to pick the Packers with all the momentum. It's a pure gut feeling. I think the gut feeling here. I told Hammer I was going to pick against the Packers because Hammer is not here because he's watching The Bachelor in Paradise, everyone. So if you guys made it this far, make sure to jeer Hammer in the comments down below. He's watching Bachelor in Paradise instead of recording a podcast. Like for week 1, nonetheless. Maybe if this was week 7 and no one gave a shit because it's mid-season, it doesn't really mean as much. But week 1, man, you got to be hyped for your team. You got to be here. But he's watching
nervous.
Bachelor. He's nervous. He's nervous. 100%. And week 1, you got to be here to support your boys. I wanted to pick against them because of that, but I am going to go with the Packers.
Hammer's sitting on his couch, sipping a nice glass of wine, watching Bachelor in Paradise, while we're ragging on the Green Bay Packers. Yep, in a robe. Yeah. Must be nice.
So, must be nice, man. Must be nice. Anyways, moving on to the Texans versus the Rams. Ty, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is where we start to get into some of these really, really good games. This is probably, I feel like it's always these last 4 games that we talk about are like the best matchups we get into. But we've talked so highly of the Rams this whole offseason. It's just been the question mark is, what's Matthew Stafford's availability going to be, right? Because they add Devontae Adams. They finished the season really strongly last season, right? They were basically a play away from defeating the Eagles, who were the Super Bowl champs, and playing in the NFC Championship game. And what you could have imagined, maybe they go on and beat the Commanders and go to the Super Bowl, right? So we are going to get Matthew Stafford. Obviously the addition of Devontae Adams is a huge upgrade for them, right? Because obviously Cooper Kupp, familiarity in that offense, had a lot of success a couple years ago, but just hasn't been able to stay on the football field. And I think this is the year that Puka Nacua really takes a huge step up and puts his foot into that top 5 wide receiver conversation as like that lead slot guy for them. And then obviously on the defensive side of the ball, right, they're young, they're growing. The pass rush is really, really good between Fisk and Verse, and they added some guys in the draft. I don't really love the secondary that much, but I'm not really concerned about the Houston Texans offense, because their offensive line is so bad. I love CJ Stroud, I love Nico Collins. But, this team is they kind of have an uphill battle for them right now, right? Because the offensive line's not great. No Joe Mixon for maybe the entire season, right? It's kind of left up in the air. Then you got Nick Chubb, who, he's got the knees of a 60-year-old man. I'm hopeful that, Woody Marks can get some good run for them, because I think he can be one of those types of guys that kind of like what Chase Brown was for the Bengals when Zach Moss went down. That's, kind of a change of pace for them. Woody Marks runs really hard. I'm a USC fan. Got to see him run last year, right? Like, yeah, I think he's a really good back that could shine in this offense. But, it's just tough when that offensive line's so bad. They got all these weapons, and they got this great quarterback, and they got this amazing defense, right? And Houston's defense is what's going to keep them in a lot of games because their pass rush is so good. They got an amazing secondary, right? CJ Johnson, who we thought was not going to play, is going to play. But it's that offensive line, and that's going to be what we're going to talk about week in and week out. And so because of that, right, with the Rams defensive line being so good, like we talked about, I'm going to go with the Rams here.
Sterb, anything to add?
Yeah, man, what a fun game. Like this game is going to be awesome. I honestly think it's going to be like kind of everyone's going to get together and say, like, guys, what were we thinking? Matthew Stafford plays through injuries and they added Devontae Adams. Like, there's no way that this was going to be a bad team. Maybe that take goes up in flames, but I have a lot of faith in this Rams offense being good. And, I have a lot of faith in the Texans offense, or the Texans defense being good as well. But, I think on an even day, good offense beats better defense, or beats good defense. So, and then obviously, like Ty just said, the concerns with the Houston O-line is like, that's nothing to be taken lightly. Like, you traded Laramie Tunzel, you bring in Ariante Urser, who's like, I believe he was a 2nd-round pick, if not a 3rd-round pick, and he won that job in camp over Cam Robinson, which is like, I don't know. Like, you spent resources
win?
on both. I don't know. You spent resources on both of the guys, and like one of them definitively beat out the other. It's kind of like hedging your bets on, you need 5 spots there. It's not like you needed just 1 spot. Yeah, but anyways, this doesn't like inspire a whole lot of confidence in me. Like, this is kind of just like CJ Stroud and Nico Collins kind of bail us out, versus like, Matthew Stafford, Devontae Adams, and Puka Nacua, and then you have Kyron back there as well. So this is going to be one of my favorite games of the week, I think, bar none. But I'm going with the Rams here.
Yeah, I got to go with the Rams here as well. Everything you guys added, I just want to add one thing. Like, he was sacked 50 times last year, CJ Stroud, and they went and traded Laramie Tunsil, their best piece on the offensive line. They said, you know what? We're going to fix this offensive line by trading our best piece and then replacing him with worse players. And then our O-line is going to be better. So I just don't get the mindset there, right? With, like, we talk about the Micah Parsons trade, right? And how terrible that was. But I'd argue that was technically, like, with how the team is set up and how the O-line was already struggling and how bad their offensive line was and how it was making their offense regress significantly. I think that's possibly a worse trade, just in the fact that you're trading your best O-lineman when your O-line is already terrible. So I think the Rams get it done here over the Texans, and I think it could cause CJ Stroud to struggle in this game significantly if the pressure starts getting there. We saw that in the playoffs last season. Once the pressure started getting there, CJ Stroud got a little bit shaky, and I think the Rams do that early in this one. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, Ty, we got the Ravens taking on the Bills. This is a fun one. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is game of the week, right? You got the 2 defending MVPs, right? Obviously, the guys that have gone after MVP for the past couple of years now. This is tough for me, right? Because everything is telling me take the Ravens, right? I think I love the Ravens defense. What I've seen from Mike Green, the guy's got insane bend, and I think he's going to be a problem for them. The offense is good. But something about the early season Ravens, right? Like, I just feel like they are always slow to roll into the season. You saw it last year, right? They didn't look great against the Chiefs. They lost late in that game, right? Obviously, the likely touchdown. They lost to the Raiders, I think it was, in like week 2 or 3. Like,
it started 0-2.
Yeah, they're just a very like slow to start team for some reason, and that's not great when you're going against a team of the Buffalo Bills acumen, right? They get James Cook back, right? They kind of solved all those issues. I imagine that some of those weapons, like Keon Coleman, will take a step up. They obviously bring in the familiarity of Gabe Davis into this offense too, who I don't by any means think is a great weapon, but Josh Allen knows him, right? It's kind of like a lot of these situations, right, where Herbert gets Keenan Allen back. Do I think Keenan Allen at this point in time is anything more than a wide receiver, a low end wide receiver 2? No, but it's a safety blanket for a quarterback when he knows this is where this guy's going to be every single time because I played with him for so many years now. And then you flip the other side of the ball for Buffalo, right? I love the additions that they made on the defensive line. I'm kind of expecting Joey Bosa to take a little bit of a step up here. I've been watching actually a lot of Joey Bosa film, just kind of trying to break down like what he was doing at Ohio State to kind of help me in coaching. And what Bosa does is just he's a fantastic edge rusher. He's so technically sound. That long arm that he has is killer. And then you add him into Landon Jackson, some of the other pieces they already had. They get healthy with Matt Milano coming in. So I'm going to go with Buffalo here, even though, like I said, everything's telling me take Baltimore. I think they're the better team, but they're slow to start, and Buffalo is no team to mess around with. So I'm going to go with the Bills.
Yeah, Sterb, anything to add?
Yeah, I think I'm also going to go with the Bills here. They are the home team. So one thing I'm really looking for is how the Bills handle this elite rushing attack between Lamar and Derrick Henry. If you're going to pick out a weak point of the Bills, it is the defense, even if there's not like a whole, even if there's not a whole lot of surrounding talent at the pass catchers, Josh Allen can elevate those guys to a certain level of play that's, passable in terms of a competing roster. But, the defense is really what's been letting them down. And this is obviously a Super Bowl caliber team that they're going up against here in Baltimore, and possibly the greatest rushing duo ever, or rushing duo threat ever. So really, I don't think you can let the Ravens hit an explosive early in the game and then just kind of like let Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, kill you by 1,000 cuts. I think that's like how you lose this game. But I do have a lot of faith in Josh Allen, and you get the home crowd behind you. And I think the Bills come out and throw like a huge offensive punch in this one, and I don't think the Ravens are going to be able to keep up. So it really came down to like the home team for me. So I'm going to go with the Bills here.
Yeah, we like throughout this episode, I've mentioned the home team, right? The home field advantage having such a huge impact. And I think this is another one of them. I think the Bills come out and win, and it's against like all expectations because the Ravens are the better team. I think they're the better team in the playoffs. I think the regular season, the Bills are the better regular season team. So it helps them out a little bit there too. But the Bills, the defensive side of the ball is a really big weak point. And I think this game is going to be a high scoring game. I think the Bills win in a shootout. Obviously, Tre'Davious White is questionable to play. I don't believe he practiced today, and he hasn't practiced for a little while. The last couple of weeks, he hasn't practiced, but he's expected to possibly play, according to Sean McDermott. So this is a guy that I think if Tre'Davious White plays, it helps your defense out a good amount just with the vet presence. But without him, this defense probably is going to struggle against this Ravens-led offense. That being said, I think the Bills win. Like it's completely against all mentality and intelligence, knowing what I know going into this game, that the Ravens are the better team. They have the better offense as a whole. They have better weapons. They have a better defense by a wide margin. And they added Malachi Starks this offseason as well, in addition to Mike Green. So this Ravens team is really good, but week one, they're not a good team. So I'm going to go the Bills here as well in this one. Moving on to the Monday night football game, we got the Vikings taking on the Bears. Final game of the week. Sterb, what are your thoughts for this one?
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one too. It's two young, kind of more inexperienced quarterbacks versus like some pretty good defensive minds. And honestly, like that I think their minds are going to get a little scrambled, and this could turn into like a sneaky, like sloppy game, like maybe like 4 total picks or something like that. I don't think that's that crazy to be in the cards there. So obviously this would be a huge statement for the Bears if they came out and win this game. If they came out and won this game, it is at home for them as well. I'm looking at how both of these quarterbacks kind of run the scheme. Like JJ McCarthy is, shown that he can like color inside the lines a little more at Michigan. And Caleb kind of struggled with that last year. He held on to the ball a little too long, took a bit too many sacks. And with Ben Johnson, like, how's that looking? We saw that in the preseason. That first drive of the Bills game, obviously that's like as high end as it gets for a quarterback running the scheme and just being like on time, accurate. Do we see that in the regular season versus this Brian Flores defense? I don't think so, but I'm not like too confident in either of these quarterbacks putting together a good performance against the other defense. So I'm going to lean on the more talented team here, and I'm going to go with Minnesota.
Okay. Ty, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, sir, right? Like, maybe you're not confident about either these quarterbacks, playing a fantastic game, but to be quite honest, the Vikings, with how talented their team is, like you said, JJ McCarthy does not have to play fantastic, right?
Yeah.
He can throw for 150 yards every game, and they're going to be in the game because that defense is so damn good, right? Flores is going to scheme it up. They only got better adding, a ton of big bodies on that defensive line, right, with Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen. And then on the flip side, right, like the Adam Thielen addition, obviously it means a lot right now with Jordan Addison out. He's super familiar with that offense, and him, Jettas kind of vibe off each other. But in the long run of this season, right, you start to think about when Jordan Addison comes back, you got Jordan Addison, Adam Thielen, and Jettas in addition to Hawkinson, the Jordan Mason, Aaron Jones backfield, right? Like that team is the Vikings are all in not only on JJ McCarthy, but they're all in on like trying to be a Super Bowl contending team. I think they're kind of, being slept on because obviously JJ being a rookie quarterback, and then obviously with the Lions and the Packers being so good in that division and all the additions that, the Packers made in this offseason. But the Vikings, man, like they were able to go, 14 wins last season with Sam Darnold, a guy who, I believe in having success continually, but, before that, he had done nothing in his career. So, yeah, I think the Vikings just are the more talented team and the more steady, sturdy team, right? The Bears, there's just been so much, craziness going on there, and obviously bring in Ben Johnson, I think will settle things a little bit. But even in training camp, it was talks of, can Caleb and the rest of the offense understand Ben Johnson's playbook, and are they going to grasp it? And they looked pretty good in that one preseason game, but let's see what they can do in the regular season, especially against a defense like this and defensive coordinator like Brian Flores.
Yeah, well, this one's really interesting for me, right? I think the Vikings, we saw Caleb Williams. He was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde against them last year. In one game, he had 32 completions for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns in a very close overtime loss. And then in the second game, he only had 18 completions, 191 yards, and 1 touchdown. So against this Vikings defense that is very good, he can either be boom or bust. And we saw that last season. Now going into this year, I think the Bears significantly improved on defense just with the coaching hire alone and Dennis Allen. I think Dennis Allen will go in there and coach up that defense to a point that they'll be able to stop the Vikings offense and make this a fun game. Like you said, Sterb, I think this could be a sloppy game on offense for both teams. And I think it could end up being a turnover battle, which defense wins it for the team. That being said, I'm going to have to go. This is a second underdog. We only get one underdog pick per week, but I'm going to go with the Bears here over the Vikings. I think the Bears come in at home, and I think Caleb Williams plays well enough to win them the game. I think J.J. McCarthy struggles against this defense in his first ever regular season NFL start. So I'm going to give the Bears the small advantage here in this one, eking out a win at home over the Vikings. Do you guys have anything like crazy to say about that? I know that's like a kind of wild take, but
no, I don't really think that's crazy at all.
No, I mean this game
I can see this game going either way.
Yeah, these two teams are very talented, right? It's just, can Caleb Williams kind of corral himself under this Ben Johnson offense?
Vindication. That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear right there. Anyways, moving on to our rapid fire topics. So each week we're going to be giving one fantasy player of the week for all of us, one hot take each of us, and then also we're going to be giving a parlay that we pick each week. The parlay is going to be a running prop, a passing prop, a receiving prop, and then a touchdown of our choice. So getting right into the first discussion, we got fantasy player of the week. Ty, who's going to be your fantasy player of the week and why?
Yeah, my fantasy player of the week is going to be Alvin Kamara against the Arizona Cardinals. I think that this, Cardinals team, like I talked about earlier, I think they're going to be ahead most of the game. I think that's really good for Alvin Kamara, especially in the fantasy if you're in a PPR. I imagine him getting a lot of touches in the passing game. But just alone, the Cardinals last season were 32nd in points per game to running backs in fantasy football. So, and if you look at the construction of their roster, right, the defense is a lot of like pass rushers, the pretty good secondary, no Walter Nolan. So I think Alvin Kamara is set for maybe not a big game in rushing, right? Like I don't think that they're going to be running the ball a lot, but I think he's going to get a lot of touches in the passing game. Especially with, just kind of thinking about like the strengths of the quarterbacks, right? They're not Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shuck, whoever, if Shuck gets some time, they're not going to be chucking the ball down the field because I think they just don't have the ability to, kind of throw some of these darts. So I think it's going to be, a lot of these check downs to Alvin Kamara. And you think about what Kellen Moore was with Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley got a lot of touches. So fantasy player of the week, Alvin Kamara versus the Cardinals.
Yeah, and people forget, like Alvin Kamara is probably, I would say, the highest floor of like running backs in the league in regards to fantasy at this point in time, especially at the ADP, like people were getting him. So I think that's a really good pick here. Sterb, who's going to be your fantasy player of the week?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I'm going to go a little bit deeper down the board, and I'm going to go Josh Downs here. I think the Colts are going to have to play catch up a little bit. Daniel Jones is kind of notorious for throwing the ball short of the sticks, and Josh Downs just kind of feasts in there. And I think the starting nickel defender for Miami is Jason Marshall, and I think Josh Downs is just going to feast on that. So he's a great route runner, great target earner, great separator, and he's kind of a guy you can just feed when you're down and kind of dink and duck down the field a little bit, which Daniel Jones is kind of notorious for. So if you're playing in PPR, absolutely love it this week.
Yeah, I love it. I have him in a couple of my dynasty leagues, so I'm praying that prediction does come true. My fantasy player of the week is going to be the Steelers defense and special teams. No, I'm kidding. It's not, guys. It's not. Come on. What are we thinking? This
Kyle
is
Pitts.
James Retired. Yeah, Kyle Pitts. No, I'm kidding. I do think the Steelers defense will be a really good fantasy play, though. Like I said, I think they hold the Jets to less than 10 points. But my real fantasy player of the week is going to be David Njoku going against the Cincinnati Bengals defense. And the reasoning is that David Njoku has gone off the last 2 games that he's played against them. I think that continues again with Joe Flacco here. We saw with Joe Flacco in the Browns when he was there 2 seasons ago, him and David Njoku had a really strong connection. And in the last 2 games against the Bengals defense, David Njoku went 8 receptions for 66 yards and then 10 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown. So in PPR leagues or even in tight end premium leagues, that is huge fantasy numbers at the tight end position. So I think you can really trust him there. So do you guys have anything to add? What are your thoughts on David Njoku there? And I know Joe Flacco scares you guys a little bit, but what are your thoughts?
No, I love the Njoku one because obviously, like you mentioned, right, him and Flacco had a great connection. 2 seasons ago, kind of when we were talking about Judy earlier, I was going to say, like Njoku, that's going to be their number 1 receiver. He's going to be their guy as long as Joe Flacco's the starting quarterback because of the connection they had. So I like the pick there.
Sweet.
Yeah, I like it as well. He's a good target earner. He's great in tight end premium as well. So
more vindication. I love it. I love it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for hyping me up. Anyways, moving on to the hot take segment. Ty, what's going to be your hot take of the week?
Yeah, my hot take of the week kind of goes hand in hand with Sterb's fantasy player of the week, but it's going to be Daniel Jones throws for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and the Colts win by double-digit points. Daniel Jones has only thrown for 300 yards 9 times in his career, but when you look at the Miami Dolphins defense, specifically the secondary, outside of Minka Fitzpatrick, it's a joke. I mean, I don't even know the guy that Sterb said was their nickel corner. Josh Downs might get 100. Josh Downs might get 150 yards alone against that nickel corner. I think that Daniel Jones is, I don't think he's a fantastic quarterback, but I think, he's got a lot of, like I mentioned earlier when we were kind of breaking down the game, he's got a lot of really good weapons around him. He's playing a really, really bad secondary. This might be his only 300-yard game of the season, but it's a hot take. 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Colts win by double-digit points.
I love it. Sterb, what's going to be your hot take?
I'm going to say the Jags lay 40 on the Panthers. I know that's a high mark to hit, but, Liam Cohen, like I just said, he's had all offseason to prepare for this. You have so many weapons at your disposal, like all the guys that they add in the backfield. Look out for LaQuinn Allen lining up in the slot. That'll be something that I'm watching for. But Brian Thomas Jr. might have like 2 touchdowns and like 150 yards in this game as well. I don't really think there's a corner that can hang with him. I know that the Panthers have J.C. Horn, who I feel like is a little overrated. He's overrated. Yeah, he's pretty overrated in terms of like the national discussion or whatever. But I think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to fry him. So you get like T-Law here as well. I thought about like doing one there, but I feel more confident just like betting on Liam Cohen and this offense as a whole. So I'm going to go with the Jags laying 40.
I like it. My hot take, it's not as big of a hot take as those two. I wasn't expecting that much, but I got the Seahawks absolutely dominating the 49ers in week 1. I had them dominating them at all phases of the game, on offense, on defense, special teams. I think the Seahawks just absolutely look dominant in week 1 against the 49ers. And I think they hold them to I'd say they hold the 49ers less than 14 points. And I know that's the hot take. I guess I'll throw that in there because I'm just coming up with that on the spot. Less than 14 points for the 49ers. Seahawks absolutely dominate 28-14. Give that my pick. Anyways, moving on from there. I don't need vindication on that. I know I'm not going to get any because that's a little bit crazy. But anyways, moving on to the Sunday or to the weekly parlays. Ty, start us off. What's going to be your parlay? So it's a receiving prop, a passing prop, a rushing prop, and then a touchdown. What's your pick?
Yeah, so starting with the passing prop kind of goes with my hot take. I'm going to take Daniel Jones over 199.5 passing yards. By the way, I'm just taking straight, their regular props. I would be very happy with taking the alt line there of anything higher. I'm going to go with Bijan Robinson under 77.5 yards. In every matchup that he's had against the Falcons, he has hit that under. The last 2 matchups last season, obviously when he had the most success, only 63 and 60 yards in those games. So I like the under 77.5 there. The receiving prop, dropping my phone. Receiving prop is Alvin Kamara over 4.5 receptions And this is one that I definitely would like the alt line on. I was thinking about, when I was thinking about taking some of the alts, maybe alt 7.5 plus. I think he could really have like an 8, 9, 10 plus catch game, because I really think they're going to have to throw the ball, and it's going to be a lot of Alvin Kamara. And then the last one, my touchdown, I'm going to go with, I think, a safe one, but Saquon Barkley touchdown. And if you like it, first touchdown bets, my boy Spence, follow him on Twitter. He said Saquon Barkley first touchdown is a good bet to take.
Interesting.
So to recap, it's Daniel Jones over 199.5 passing yards, Bijan under 77.5 rushing yards, Alvin Kamara over 4.5 receptions, and a Saquon Barkley touchdown.
I like it. What are the odds?
Plus 910, plus 950. Excuse me.
950. Okay. Sterb, what's your parlay going to be?
All right, here we go. Buckle in. So kind of like going along that same line with the Jags, I have Brian Thomas Jr. This is an alt line, 100 plus yards. I think he's going to fry JC Horn and like any other corner that he matches up with against the Panthers. And then for my rushing yards, I got Drake May. Drake May averaged like 33.5 yards rushing last year. And that's including games that he didn't even finish. So Josh McDaniels has come in and he said that like he's going to get Drake May like maybe 1 or 2 design rushes a game. And if he gets like an extra yard on that or is a little more effective on scrambles, guess what? He's hitting that line. And then I have AJ Brown, anytime touchdown scorer. The cornerbacks that the Cowboys are starting are Kyer Elam. We saw what happened in the playoffs with him. Deron Bland, who's very overrated, and then Trevon Diggs off of injury. So I think AJ Brown's probably good for like a big body contested catch in the red zone. Yeah. And then I think that Jane Daniels is going to have over 228.5 passing yards, and that's his baseline. I think this is going to be a little bit of a closer game than maybe people are thinking, maybe a little bit less of a defensive matchup. I know both of the defenses are good, but I think the offenses are going to try and have to keep up with each other. And I like Jane Daniels just kind of like being contained by this, by the New York Giants front and then having to pass. And, he brings in Deebo Samuel here as well. So maybe that helps out his yardage a little bit. So altogether, this is plus 38.70. So $10 wins. What is that? $387. So a little bit longer, but I feel good about it.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think it's a solid. I think they're all very probable. I'll give you that. So I don't mind it at all. My parlay is going to start with David Njoku. I mentioned him just a minute ago as the fantasy player of the week. His line is currently at over 49.5 yards. I think he can easily get that. He's done it the last 2 times they played, and I think Joe Flacco will help him get there. It's not the receptions, but it's receiving yards, and I think the over in yards at 50 is pretty attainable for him. Next, I got David Montgomery over at 43.5 yards rushing. I think he gets that. He's hit that the last 4 times they've played the Packers, and I think that continues this year. I think obviously, right, when you look at the Packers, they just traded for Micah Parsons, but they got rid of Kenny Clark. They're the guy that helped out in the run defense in the middle. They still have a solid run defense nonetheless. I think Edgerrin Cooper will be able to help out from the linebacker position, but I think David Montgomery is still going to be able to reach 43.5 yards week 1. My passing yards is going to be Drake May over 214.5. Obviously going against the Raiders here. The Raiders defense is absolutely putrid in the secondary. I'm not a fan of any of their guys back there. The D-line, Max Crosby, obviously scares me a little bit, but I think Drake May will be able to get over 215 yards. Now, my alt touchdown scorer is going to be Rashid Shaheed scoring a long bomb against the Cardinals, starting off the Saints season right. Obviously, I think Rashid Shaheed last year when he was healthy, he had a touchdown, I think, in every game but the Eagles game. He was balling out. He was getting long bombs left and right. And I think that continues here. I think Spencer Rattler will be able to hit him. He had a touchdown in the bag against the Broncos. Against Pat Surtain, absolutely destroyed Pat Surtain's ankles on a seemingly was like a post slant, like a skinny post. And if Spencer Rattler hit him, it's a touchdown like 10 out of 10 times. He just missed a throw. So I think Shaheed gets a touchdown, and it bumps up the odds significantly for this bet. So I put him in there for that reason. So in recap, my parlay is going to be David Njoku over 49.5 receiving yards, David Montgomery over 43.5 rushing yards, Drake May over 214.5 passing yards, and Rashid Shaheed anytime touchdown scorer. That gives you plus 2,810 odds. Those are great odds. You put $5 down on that, you're winning a lot of money. If you put $10 on it, you're winning $281. So
just burn
odds.
Your money because Rashid Shaheed is in there.
He's scoring. I don't know what to say. I feel so confident.
He could have scored if his quarterback could throw the goddamn football.
Oh, he
in the Eagles game, which was the only game that he didn't have a touchdown. They were both like overthrows from Derek Carr. Just saying.
Yep.
Just saying.
He's gonna do it. I'm telling you. Last year, right? One touchdown on 3 receptions for 73 yards against the Panthers to start the season. The Cowboys, 1 touchdown, 96 yards and 4 receptions against the Cowboys. And then the Eagles shut down the Foul Clowns. Yeah. He had 11 targets, 8 receptions, only for 83 yards, no touchdown. And then the Chiefs, another long bomb against a good defense, right? The Chiefs are a good defense. So I think he'll be able to do it here against the Cardinals, who are a solid defense, but not as good. And all it takes is Will Johnson taking one bad step, and Rashid Shaheed's gone for a touchdown.
If you can burn Pat Surtain, you can burn Will Johnson.
It is my boy. That's your boy.
There's no boys when they're playing the Saints. So, Will Johnson, I hope your feet get burned off your legs in this one here. So Rashid Shaheed, go do that for me. Anyways, that'll do it for our weekly picks episode. Really long episode. We're at almost an hour and a half here. We'll try to slim that down a little bit in the future, but this was a good starting episode, right? It's week 1 of the NFL. We're excited. We got to give you the top line analysis and picks. So make sure to stay tuned for next week. And we will be shouting out the leaders of the pick 'em group after week 1 in the preview or the beginning of next week's episode. So stay tuned for that. You guys know where to check us out on social media at Jenks Island, or wherever you get your podcasts at Jenks Island as well. We'll see you guys next week.